Cohn.
Good morning. Nice to be with you again.
Let's start with the tweet in all caps where President Trump threatened Iraq, and they will suffer the consequences, the likes which few throughout history have ever suffered before. Read the tea leaves for us. What's going on there?
Well, I think this is just a continuation of what this president has done for the 18 months he's been in office, which is use Twitter and his personal tweets to express viewpoints that many in the traditional national security world shudder when they see. But from his perspective and the perspective of his administration, they feel it's a valuable tool in getting people to the table. I think with the Iranians, though, it may be a significant miscalculation.
We had them in a box, right? We had them off the front page. We had this deal with them, as flawed as it was. They were safe, secure in a sense. It seems like we have chosen to pick a fight with them.
Right, and there's two important things to remember about Iran. First, their objective. Their primary objective is to be the primary regional power in the Middle East. Before the counterbalance was Iraq, Iraq no longer is that counterbalance. So you see Iran and Lebanese Hezbollah, which is their proxy organization, going into Yemen and exerting it, and going into Iraq, going into Syria, exerting itself, and they want to be the dominant power in that region of the world. The second thing to remember about Iran is they are responsive, and they respond in a symmetrical way to what the U.S. does. It's highly unlikely that Iran would initiate a conventional war-type actions against the United States, but when the United States does things, they will respond in a manner that's consistent with what the U.S. does. So you saw the president issued a tweet, and so now their government issued a sort of a snarky tweet. That's what you can expect from Iran. They will respond in a manner consistent with what we do.
What do you make of President Trump wanting to revoke the security clearance of some of the former intelligence community?
I think it's a very slippery slope, and it's very disturbing. Senior officials, when they leave government, maintain their security clearances to the benefit of the U.S. government, meaning there are issues and information they have from their time on that is of benefit to the U.S. as their replacements are trying to deal with many of the issues that they were dealing with in the past. Also, using that as a hook to gain basically avenge critical comments is just not the way we want our government to operate.
There was a time when foreign policy wasn't a Republican or a Democratic ideal.
No, that's true. And if you look at the people who are mentioned here, they're either apolitical, like Brennan and Clapper, who have served both Democrats and Republicans, or they're Republicans. So it's also, you raise another interesting point, is that we tend to look at issues facing the country today, like Russia, through the lens of what political party we belong to. I mean, Russia, as we've talked about before, Russia seeks to weaken the U.S. They seek to undermine our relationships with NATO. There was just a report this morning about a Homeland Security intelligence bulletin that talks about how Russia has infiltrated, through cyber attacks, our power grid. So, they are not our friend. They don't want to be our friend. They want us to get out of their way so they can be more dominant globally. And that should be something that concerns Republicans and Democrats alike. You shouldn't just be concerned about Russia because you don't like Donald Trump.
I wanted to bring up this report in the Wall Street Journal with the Department of Homeland Security, and you just mentioned it here, where apparently state-sponsored hackers from Russia got into U.S. utilities to the point where they could have turned off the switches. What do you know, and what do you think when you read something like that?
Yeah, I mean, we've known for years that Russia, as part of their efforts to engage in what we call asymmetrical or hybrid warfare against the United States, have looked at using cyber intrusions as a way not only to gain information, but to basically attack our critical infrastructure. So this is something that the Department of Homeland Security and the intelligence community has been concerned about for several years. The fact that they're issuing a unclassified bulletin warning of that illustrates their concern. We only have to look at the statements of the Director of National Intelligence, I think it was last week, where he said the warning lights are blinking. So, I mean, I go back to what I said earlier. Russia is an adversarial nation. They have been engaged in a multi-year effort to weaken the United States. They seek to undermine our relationship with NATO. They are preparing. Are preparing or have engaged in a variety of activities against this country that are essentially a form of hybrid warfare. And we should be doing everything we can, whether you're a Republican or a Democrat, to protect this nation.
John, we found out about this week. Would the president have known about this before he met with Vladimir Putin?
I can't imagine he wouldn't have. I mean, there were media reports about this going back to March, not in the form of this bulletin, this unclassified bulletin that was just reported in the Wall Street Journal this morning. There have been intelligence reports on this. I can't imagine that this wasn't a part of his daily brief at some point, or it wasn't a part of the specific briefing provided to him in advance of these meetings. And
so do you think this was leaked, reported to sort of go against what Donald Trump has said, or his friendly nature with Vladimir Putin, a man whose state-sponsored hacking got into our utilities?
Yeah, I don't know, but I mean, I think what you are seeing is, again, from the public statements of intelligence leaders, whether it be the Director of National Intelligence, whether it's the head of the FBI, whether it's the head of the National Security Agency, real concern, not only about Russia as it relates to their efforts to undermine our electoral process, not only with regard to Russia as it relates to them trying to undermine our democracy, which are the words these intelligence leaders are using, but the fact that Russia is very aggressively seeking to use cyber attacks and cyber tools in order to attack the very infrastructure of this country. My suspicion is this has less to do with trying to feed into the media story about Helsinki and the summit with Vladimir Putin, and more to do with the parts of the federal government trying to warn the public.
John Cohn, ABC News consultant and acting Undersecretary for Intelligence at the Department of Homeland Security. John, thanks for your time.
Nice talking to you.